Hey, my amazing, wonderful bestie. I hope you're having an amazing day. Welcome to our very first episode of Tea Party Tuesdays with Sid, where I sit down with you every Tuesday with surrounding topics on building self esteem, confidence, and showing up as the best version of yourself to create a life you love. And today's topic, we'll be diving into my diary of being a former people pleaser. And one thing about me, I love a good backstory. So I'm selfishly gonna tell you mine today. No, but for real, this is the backstory of SydSelfCare and pretty much the journey of how I got to where I am today. The tea that we're sipping on today is chamomile tea because I wanted to be all chill and get comfy with you because, okay, I really wanted this to be the first episode that we do because I've been wrestling with this feeling between me and you. I feel like I haven't given you the backstory on who I am. I feel like you don't know me enough to feel like we're true besties. So we're gonna get real deep and comfy here. So go ahead and grab your tea and let's dive right in. The story starts with the military. No, I didn't join the military. My dad did. I feel like I had a pretty normal military childhood. We moved every 2 to 3 years, so I was always the new girl. Both of my parents were together. I was being raised with my two younger sisters, and overall, it was a happy home. We were singing karaoke, playing dance central, and rock band. That's all you heard around the house. But I think from a young age, from the constant moving, I was always a new girl, and I was I am a very outgoing, extroverted person. So I was pretty bold. I wasn't afraid to walk up to kids and ask them if they wanted to be my friend, even when I would get rejected, okay? A lot of my people pleasing behavior, I feel like came from this, from the constant moving, always being the new girl. I really just wanted to fit in. I craved having a group of people that I belonged to, and I really just wanted people to like me. I wanted to be part of the cool kids crowd so bad. And because I wanted people to like me, that's where I got, honestly, most of my validation from. I found myself at a very early age learning how to mold my personality, my behaviors, and my speech to be accepted in these groups and be able to mold myself to all of these groups so that way I'm always fitting in. Everyone loves Sydney. I'm part of everyone's group. I'm everyone's friend. And eventually, this just bled into everything else. I ended up wanting to be the teacher's pet because all of that praise felt so good too. But what's crazy though is I can say all of this now, but I mean, at the time when I was a kid, all I saw it as is you do a good thing, people like you, and you get rewarded. I wanted to live up to these high standards that my parents had set for me. I mean, I was the oldest, so eventually I ended up holding even higher standards for myself. And to be honest, that's where a lot of my negative self talk started to begin. And life pretty much went on like that until something major happened. It was a candid event, okay? My dad was deployed and we were on the way home from a friend's house. It was me, my mom, and my sisters in the car. I was in the front seat with my mom, and pretty much we were taking the same route that we always did home. We were 2 streets away from home, and then we got in a wreck. Mom got in a DUI accident with us in the car. I was around 13 and my sister was 11 and the other one was 3. And that was the first time I felt what only I could imagine was like true adult anger. I don't know what was going through my head. I just started cussing at my mom like a mom would cuss at her kids. I don't know. And I would just wished I grabbed the steering wheel when she started to swerve. And when I try to think back on it, it kind of just blacks out. I just remember us like hitting a fence and that was really it. And and things just weren't really the same after that. There was a huge shift that happened in the household. I don't know, mom wasn't the same. We weren't the same. And if I'm being for real, that's when my teen rebellion years started to kick in. After the accident, there was such a sudden shift and disconnect at home. I felt like I needed to fill that void, but I didn't even know that it existed, you know? It just was just a sudden shift, and my young self didn't know that. I just knew that I wanted to distract myself. Unfortunately, the only way I knew how to fill that void was through attention and people pleasing and just getting that validation from that. I was the girl that always had a boyfriend, was always hanging out with her friends. I was always talking to someone because in reality, I just hated being alone. I literally couldn't stand my own presence. It was crazy. So I was boy crazy for far too long, and I just craved male validation and attention because it made me feel like I was enough. I mean, that's as straight up and blunt as I can put it because I literally had zero self worth and I craved that attention so much that it led to heartbreak, stress, and depressive episodes. I truly lost myself in that, and I didn't even know who that person was anymore. So, fast forward to 15-year-old me, mom and dad had a falling out. We were about to move to Germany, and usually they got back together, but this time, mom said she was out, she was done. And when she lived with us, I remember being in her bathroom with her and asking her, were we just not enough for you? I mean, I was probably being dramatic, but I really wanted to know. And I just remember her telling me, like, yeah, it's not enough. And I'm 15 hearing that, so I'm just hearing, you're not enough. It was then that I felt like my worth was conditional. I thought it was conditional in all aspects, really. And it was then that I started to be even more avoidant in my attachment style. And I just truly believed that if anyone got too close or knew the real me, they would just leave. And so this is when my fake it till I make it mindset kicked in because that was like my armor. That was my way of protecting myself. But it ultimately hindered me when I wanted to start showing up as my authentic self. Once I started wanting to show up as the real me, I didn't even know who she was. Of course, this ended up leading into more heartbreak and more dark moments because I really just felt like I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how I wanted to show up. I didn't know what to really do. I felt really lost. And I just really didn't understand it at the time. I just knew I didn't want to feel like that. During this era, I remember saying the universe is punishing me. And naturally, I'd be given even more problems. But now I'm able to see that the universe was just giving me what I was energetically aligned with. I could go on and on about the crazy, dumb decisions that I made that resulted in big consequences. But if I'm being real, I wouldn't change a thing. Dwelling on regrets and thinking about what I wish I could have done is out of my control. What's even crazier though is throughout all of these hard times, even though I was telling myself that the universe is punishing me and things like that, there was still this tiny little voice in my head that would say, everything works out for me. Everything works out for me. And to be honest, some days that would be the only thing that's keeping me going. And really, I don't really know where this voice came from. I feel like I've always been positive, but it really was just like this tiny voice, something. It was like crying out for help. But yeah, because of all my poor decisions, I faced tremendous consequences that pretty much led me to going through 5 therapists in order to work this teen angst out. When I think back on this, it's so funny because I went to literally like 4 licensed therapists, but ended up finding comfort in this middle-aged white man that worked at my school. And he pretty much like, shout out to Mr. Brunner because he became my soundboard and created a safe space for me to, just share my feelings and talk and really be feel heard. So by the end of senior year, I was moving back to the US and I don't know why, but I got hit with this breeze of enlightenment and I felt like I needed to leave Germany on a clean slate. Looking back, I did some pretty messed up stuff when I was there and it was really heavy on my conscience. So my younger self was really like, yeah, I need to get this all out, apologize, own up to it, and just leave Germany on a good note. And that's what I did. Okay, so now you got the childhood background, right? But now this gets even more real because now I'm not considered a kid anymore. I'm a baby adult trying to figure it out. Since my parents had high standards of me at school, I feel like that naturally made me see the cookie cutter pathway of, okay, go to school, go to college, have a good job, white picket fence, American dream, right? I also watched hella movies growing up, so my concept about real life was all types of misconstrued, filled with High School Musical and cheesy rom-coms. So I was the one who told my parents that I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna get a degree, I'm gonna do all this and that. And of course, they're just like, oh hell yeah, you do that. I remember deciding randomly that I wanted to do nursing because I felt like that was the only career path that you could go to be paid to help people physically and emotionally. I remember my intention behind it was very deep. Like since that was my concept of like the only thing being able to provide it, it was because I wanted to be there for people in every way I can because I didn't have that growing up. But who knew I would be doing that today, just not through nursing. Okay, I'm gonna breeze through this part because to make a long story short, I was able to go to UMHB using my dad's military GI Bill. The GI Bill comes with 4 years of free college, anywhere you want to go, a BAH, basic allowance of housing, of I think a little over $1,000. I never really knew the full amount. I never saw it. Oh yeah, okay. So I lived at home until 19. And while I was at home, dad wanted me home so that way I would be able to help out with my sisters, and I worked part-time, and then I was just going to school. And since I worked part-time and I was still living at home, me and my dad had this agreement that all the money would be going to his bank account, like rent, and I would be able to ask him if I needed anything. I was very, 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 very grateful that I got to go to school for free, because I mean, who doesn't want to go to school for free? Who doesn't want to graduate without debt? So that was amazing. But then COVID hit, and I was like in the middle of my sophomore year. I finished out sophomore year, I started junior year, but it was just too much. Because not only was I at school, like since COVID happened, I was already working at a full-time job then, and just taking on my full-time job and full-time school, that was just way too much. So I chose to pursue my full-time job because at this time I was working at a small business as a colon hydrotherapist. I was kind of getting my feet dipped into entrepreneurship, and I really, really liked it. I really liked the idea of running a business. Well, I decided to quit school and pursue full-on colon hydrotherapy because it's a practice that I truly believe in. And I felt very grateful for the time and experience I had there. Like felt like I was learning more running a business than I was going to school. But after quitting nursing school, I quickly enrolled in the School of Business and School of Real Life Shit. Because when you work for a small business, you can easily start wearing all of the hats because, the business is growing. And honestly, my people pleasing went crazy here. My boss's praise and validation became my new drug for real. I know that now, but not gonna lie, I was 18 through 21 working here, feeling like I was 40 years old. Because I was working I remember getting my timesheets back and I had over 100 hours. I legit felt like I was already in my 40s because of the amount of work, stress, and time that was, put into all of this. I learned QuickBooks, marketing, business ops, seeing clients, doing B2B, like talking to other business owners to market our service. I was even my boss's personal trainer at one point. It was a lot, but I loved it all at the same time. Like I said, it gave me the taste of being an entrepreneur, and I was able to show myself the work that I can do and the results that comes from whenever I put my mind into something. If I'm being honest, I would still be working there today. The small business experience was amazing, but it had a ceiling, and I wasn't able to break it. So we had to part ways for our own good. And then this brings me back to college. I was thinking, okay, it had been 2 years since I left school. And after getting more free time, I decided I wanted to pursue colon hydrotherapy full time. I felt like it would be smart having the nursing degree on my belt and really finish what I started. So this meant going through with the GI Bill again. And I was even more excited this time because I was like, okay, cool. This feels like I'm really building something for myself. I feel like I'm making this decision on my own, and everything felt so aligned. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can get a part-time job. I don't have to be super stressed out with things because that BAH money is gonna be covering me. I was so excited. Then 2 to 3 weeks before I start classes again, my dad texts me and he's like, hey Sid, when does your money come in for the books? I was like, why is he asking me this? Because, I was just like, why would he be asking me that if I would get the money since, I wasn't living at home at the time anymore. So I was just like, okay, why is he asking me this? And I told him, oh, well, I don't know when the money comes in, but it's all good since I have it wired to my bank account. It's all good to go. And he was like, what? And I was like, what? And pretty much he was under the impression that we were on the same agreement as last time. And I assumed that we wouldn't be on that same agreement, that money would be going to me since I would be the one going to school. I would be the one taking time away from work. But pretty much that's not how the conversation went. There was no conversation about it. It ended with, well, if I can't have the money, then no one can. So the next day, he kicked me off the GI Bill. That same day, I refinanced my car and removed his name from it because he showed me he can and will take away what he's given to me. So after that, we didn't talk a while, but Don't get me wrong, I love my dad and we've been through our things. And that was just something that really like forced me into independence. It really forced me into like self-reliance. So, I mean, I'm not gonna thank him, but thank you. But yeah, we've grown a lot together, but I had bigger things to focus on. I was like, what the hell am I gonna do with my life then? Okay, I don't wanna work here. I had this idea that I was gonna be going to school. Okay, that's out of the way. So what am I gonna do now? The thing is, I wasn't clueless. I just didn't have a direction yet. I found myself working for Facebook for 3 days because they accidentally overhired the receptionist staff. But the good thing was, I got severance pay for like over a month and I was able to pay for the rest of my bills in peace and actually get an idea going for what I want my business to be. So it was all good. I knew the end goal was to have my own business, not have to answer to other people, and somehow still be helping and being there for people in the ways I didn't have growing up. And so, since that was the end goal, and I've seen how the stress is debilitating when you're operating out of survival mode trying to make rent, I knew that I wanted and needed a full time job that would fund me building my business, whatever it was going to be, and that there's a clear goal and boundary between my business and between my full time job. So, what the hell was my business gonna be? Thank God for social media and networking because that's how I was introduced to eyelash extensions. Quick backstory to the backstory. Like I said, I wasn't clueless. So, during all of this, I was trading marketing posts for vacuum butt lifts from this esthetician. Love my vacuum butt lifts, okay? If you know, you know. But I met this esthetician and we just hit it off. We clicked so fast, and she was such a huge, amazing part of my journey. How we started working together was absolutely fate because she just helped me so much in the start of my business. But during this whole dilemma of mine, I went to her and I was asking her about school. I was asking her like where she went, what she did, how much it cost, all those things. And honestly, I knew I wanted to do something in the service business because I love that client relationship. I love how it's so connected. But I knew that I didn't want to go to esthetician school because I think it was like a year long, and I was just like, no, I want to do something that I can kind of do fast and get the services going. So after looking up the school, I saw that in the state of Texas, there's an eyelash specialty license. So you're basically only doing eyelash extensions. I remember eyelash extensions, I saw them popping off on Instagram, but the only way I thought that they could be done was that like big mega volume way until I started to see a new style called wet lashes. I was on YouTube literally learning how to do them even before I started going to school, and something in me just knew that that was gonna be hot. Like that was gonna be really big. I knew that I was gonna have clientele. I knew that I was gonna be, I just had a feeling that it was gonna pop off. It was like a 5-month long class every weekend, and this absolutely was my grind era because things just started to come fast. Because of the severance pay, I was able to pay the down payment for school, but I still didn't have a job, bruh. I was a professional interviewer by this point. I honestly kept it going after Facebook let me go. And through hella interviews and driving Uber Eats in between, it's like that interview that you don't try at all. That's the one that you get. Because I found the amazing job that I have now. It literally fits all of the characteristics that I was asking for. The income is way more than I ever got while helping someone else build their dream. And it allows me to focus and be able to build SydSelfCare in peace. Although I had a job, I still had an extra $1,300 payment that I needed to make for school every month. I was basically paying for 2 apartments during this 5-month period. Oh my god, the tea got cold now. But after my 8 to 5, I would be driving Uber Eats with my girlfriend in the richest parts of Austin from 6 to 9 just to cover my school payment. This allowed us to visualize with the end goal in mind because literally I'm living in one of the places I used to deliver to. That's so crazy. But I'm not gonna lie, that schedule was tiring and it was draining and it was mentally it took a mental toll on me. But I'm so grateful for all of the fruits of my labor because that truly was the definition of how there are different seasons in your life and what matters is the meanings we attach to them. And after graduating lash school, I'm so grateful to say that I've been booked out ever since. But I was still operating out of this survival mode and lack mindset of success. Although I was abundant, I felt like I had to spread myself so thin and work so hard to achieve the end goal I wanted. And I was quickly burnt out through my full-time job and part-time lashing. It was then that I knew my priority was putting myself and my energy first and creating balance and peace in my life. I was still being a people pleaser as a business owner. I had to be honest with myself with that. I wanted to please and see any client that wanted to come to me, and I almost forgot what the big picture was. That's when I discovered the true definition of boundaries and learning to implement them. I realized that the burnout came from me not giving myself the time, attention, care, and rest that I need to feel like Sydney. And that's when I began to pivot even more. I limited my availability for lashes. I started saying no and being okay with it and putting focus on what the big picture has always been. And now we're here. By this point, everything has been going so great, and the journey looked way more different than I thought it would be. It's crazy, but I realized that you truly can't plan life in bullet points. So the main thing was I had to keep the end goal in mind. I traded working harder for working smarter. I chose to prioritize myself, my peace, and my focus. And the journey helped me discover my true self and how I want to show up in the world. And I hope it's helping you along the way too. And there you have it. That's the fetus story of SydSelfCare and my diary of being a former people pleaser. Thank you so much for watching and listening to our very first Tea Party Tuesday with Syd. Please like, subscribe, and comment more topics that you want to talk about in the next tea party. I love you so much, bestie. Have an amazing day. Bye.